Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Premier Pundits live podcast. It's the late fitness test, and my esteemed co-hosts, Mr. Johnny Wilson and Stelios from Shoot the Defence. How is everyone this evening? Stel?
You keep calling me Stelios, and I've known you for 4 or 5 years. Stop calling me Stelios. I hate that name. That's why I call it Stel for short. It's easier for people to pronounce as well. It sounds terrible in a Geordie accent as well, Ben.
Hey, honestly, after last week's no-show, we need less of your lip, my friend.
Well, you can blame Steve Jobs for that.
No. Look, the poor workman blames his tools.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know what went wrong. Even the person on the Apple help desk didn't have a clue what was going on. So, no lo sé, as the Spanish say.
It's good to see you back in the house.
Thanks. It's lovely to be back.
And how was your game week?
70 points. Which I was very pleased. Yeah, 70 points.
Solid.
Yeah. No, it was probably only because I took out Aubameyang and I put in De Bruyne. I put him as captain. 28 points against Fulham, which it probably should have been more. The amount of chances City had, but I'm not complaining. It's another good week.
So it's good above I think FPL average came in at 62. So 8 points above average. What's your overall rank at the moment?
How do I find out? Right, see, I thought I'm a complete novice to this. Even though I've been playing FPL for years, I don't actually pay attention to what I do. It could be 6 or 7 weeks before I look at it. Let's have a look.
If you look,
average, gone.
If you look on where your points are, and on the right-hand side, you will have points, rankings, overall points.
What, on the app?
Oh, the app. On the first page of the app, I think if you scroll right the way down to the bottom, and it'll have all your overall scores and leagues.
Global leagues, England.
Yeah, that one. So they should have an overall rank there as well.
Position 1,004,461.
1.4 million. That's not bad, mate. That's not bad. Look, it's been a difficult season. At this moment in time, I would take 1.4 million. There you go.
Well, where are you?
I've had back-to-back shit storms. Have dropped me down to 2.4. Man,
wow. Well, which players have let you down?
Fucking the team. I tell you what, I stuck with Aubameyang for far too long.
Right.
But I'm anti-template, you see. Anybody who's popular on FPL, anybody with high ownership, I will not bring into my team. And I vowed to captain Rashford every single week for the remainder of the season, which hasn't really worked out that well.
Well, Joe, for me right now, I've got Costa from Leeds United. Yeah, and he started the season playing games, and now he's just coming off the bench because Rafinha's coming and taking his place. And he's worth, 5.4 million? I've got 1.2 in the bank, and Ndombele is available, and he's affordable, and I can get him in because you can play three players from the same team, can't you? I've only got 2 Spurs players. So that's my tempted change, because he didn't play last week against Arsenal, but I think he'll be fit for Palace.
He's fit for tomorrow, Thursday night. So, he's back. But Mr. Wilson's sitting all quiet and patient in the corner. How the devil are you?
I'm good. I can't see the two of you.
You can't?
No.
We can see you, and I can see Stel.
Can you? Oh, it must be my side then, is it?
Yeah.
See, that's the 3rd week in a row that Macs have been playing up. Maybe they're not compatible with HotMic, even though they've been using Google.
Fair enough. No, I'm great. Yeah, last week. Oh, there's Ben back anyway, so I don't know what's going on there. But I'm great. Looking forward to this week's podcast. Last week's podcast was really good. Ben was trying to, get me to bite on a few issues last week, but basically fucking balled him, didn't I? Voila.
Straight bat. I mean, look, there are a couple of issues, a couple of key talking points from this week. And, why not just lead straight into that? We touched upon Arsenal last week and, the issues around the concussion protocol in David Luiz. Well, Arsenal have been in the news again this week.
Have they?
Yeah, look, in terms of the community and the layman, they certainly have. They've been grabbing headlines. However, you're the man that can shed some light on this and, put everybody's mind at rest, because there have been a couple of instances this week, not just Arsenal, I'm hastening to add. It happened down at West Ham with David Moyes. And we're talking about players who are returning from injury and then, breaking down, on their returns. Now, the two sort of high-profile cases in recent weeks, we're looking at Mikel Antonio at West Ham, spent, nigh on a month on the sidelines, came straight back in, done his hammy within around about 32 minutes again, a recurrence. And secondly, Thomas Partey from Arsenal. He had spent, again, 3 to 4 weeks on the sidelines due to a thigh injury, a slight tear in his quadricep muscle. And he was at fault for Tottenham's second goal on Sunday because he actually walked off the pitch following a recurrence of that. So, of course, the media, the broadcasters, all and sundry are pointing fingers at backroom staff, management, coaches, as to why these players were first and foremost picked, and should they have even been on the pitch. Many questioning that these players maybe weren't ready for a return, and that it was a little bit of a risk, or an unnecessary risk, on behalf of those managers to throw those players straight back into the team. What you say, Mr. Wilson?
Well, I think there's an ultimate responsibility here with the player. Players are way more informed these days than they were 10 years ago. So they understand you're going to do a risk analysis and you're going to do a benefits analysis. And whether the player realizes he's going through this system cognitively or not, he's actually doing it. So he's informing the medical staff and the management that, Gaffer, I'm ready, training's gone really well, did high intensity sprints, loads of change in direction, kicking the ball as hard as I can, training's gone really well, I feel like I can go in there. No manager is going to put a player in when the player says, I'm not ready. So the player says, I'm not ready, and you're never taking that chance as a gaffer, as a medical staff, as anything like that. So there seems to be like this, blanket kind of inoculation of the player in today's society that no blame can be, put upon this person. I don't know how you feel or Stel feels. You have to tell me that yourself. There's going to be a risk on returning to play prematurely. Nobody completes a full rehabilitation anyway, with regard when it comes to a high stakes environment, high consequence environment such as the Premier League. I'm not admonishing all blame towards the player here. In fact, I'm not admonishing any type of blame. I'm just saying that, when you're looking at your spread betting for like what was going on here, you have to look at a player-centered approach. And when you're doing a retrospective analysis of this, everybody's got a PhD in this. You shouldn't have played him. You should fuck off. You shouldn't have played him. How would you know? How would you know that? How would you, he got through the 90 minutes and then you were right. Everything's all right until it goes wrong. There's an old saying, things come together, things fall apart. And it's got to be a little bit more realism there. With regards to the part of, was it an unnecessary risk? Was it an unnecessary risk? With regards to those two players, one of them, you've said, walked off the fucking pitch following a recurrence, and obviously a goal was scored at that point in time. I mean, I didn't see the incident. I don't know the player. Don't know what happened there. What did happen there?
Yeah, that was ball broke on the quick counter. Tottenham, big hole left in the centre of the park, which Thomas Partey, would have filled. He felt his leg go, felt he couldn't stay on the pitch, and just sort of walked to the sidelines. Tottenham broke quickly. Heung-min Son put in Harry Kane. Great finish. Top corner, 2-0. Game over.
You would not be happy with that player, would you?
And Mikel Arteta wasn't happy with the player.
But shouldn't Arteta have some of the blame himself? Because let's be 100% honest. I know he's under pressure at the moment. Arsenal's form has been absolutely terrible. One goal in open play for what? 9 games, 8 games, if that. And yet here he is throwing in his prized asset, because let's not make any bones about it. Thomas Partey is the heartbeat of that team at this moment in time. And if he's had that conversation with the player and the medical staff have said, well, not sure about this one, but yeah, it's up to you guys. And the player says, well, I'm ready to play in the North London derby, even though I haven't played in 2 weeks. Then it's down to the manager to turn around and say, well, I'm going to risk you or I'm not going to risk you. And he took that risk because, A, he's desperate. He's desperate because they're on a really bad run of form. And B, I don't know whether he's just pandering to the Arsenal fans who are constantly calling for him to play his best team. So who's this on? I think it's on the manager, personally.
Well, he had no choice then, still, did he? It was an appropriate risk.
Well, he did have a choice, I think, Johnny, because at the end of the day, I know that his job is obviously on the line, but at the end of the day, if Thomas Partey wasn't 100% fit, why are you going to risk him in the game with such intensity? Because if it was against, like, I don't know, a Burnley, where they're going to be sitting back, they play against Spurs. It's a London derby. And obviously with Jose Mourinho as head coach, with players like Højbjerg being in great form, Sissoko, 2 midfielders, holding midfielders like that will really get into challenges. It was always going to be a recipe for disaster. That's my opinion anyway.
What was the final score?
2-0 Spurs.
2-0 Spurs. It's a ball breaker, like.
I think you've got to portion some of the blame to the fact that Mikel Arteta has made that decision. Do you think if Arteta, who is fairly new in the top job as a head coach, do you think if he had been maybe a little bit further down the line in his managerial career with a little bit more experience, do you think he may have made another decision, another call with regards to maybe involving Thomas Partey, certainly from the start after his player had missed almost a month?
Who's that question to?
We'll put it out there.
This is his first managerial job, right? So he's not experienced. He's a novice. Let's just put it that way. And people joke that he was the guy that put out cones for Pep Guardiola. That's really, really disrespectful as far as I'm concerned. But at the same time, an experienced manager would they have made that decision, that kind of decision? I don't expect someone like Solskjaer to make that decision. I don't expect Arteta to make that decision. I wouldn't expect Guardiola or Klopp to make that decision to risk players that are that important to the side, to the system, and to know full well that. And let's be honest, Ben, he hasn't played even in reserve football or under 23 football, has he, to get his fitness up? He's literally thrown him in after, 2 weeks of, I wouldn't even say rehabilitation. He's probably had a week and a half.
I think he only had 3 full sessions in the build-up to that game.
There you go. And
I mean, you touched upon a great point, I think, with regards to Pep. What we've seen earlier this season, and this was a strange one from Pep. Sergio Aguero spends nearly 4 months on the sidelines after undergoing knee surgery, tidy up some meniscus there. He comes back and he starts 3 games within a week after coming off the back of 4 months. And that 3rd game limps off and spends over a month on the sidelines after doing his hamstring in. So, is it a case of, well, Mikel Arteta's picking that up from Pep?
I think some managers make decisions to show the board's hand. And by that, I mean, they will play certain players out of position to make a point that they need an extra body in that position. Or they'll play a player with a certain injury record just to say, well, he's no use for us anymore. That's my honest opinion. That's what I've heard from other ex-pros that have said, certain players are being picked for certain reasons or whatever. Managers got favourites or whatnot. But, how can you not pick Sergio Aguero with the kind of goal scorer that he is? And again, I think City are really, really desperate for a front man, because Jesus, although he's been scoring goals, he hasn't got the strike record of Aguero. I don't think there's any doubt in his importance to the team. But Johnny, in terms of a return to play for a player such as Sergio Aguero,
high status, high profile, almost 4 months out, but he's got quite a checkered injury history anyway. A risk, in your opinion, to maybe start 3 games within the space of 8 days?
Yeah, it's too much. I mean, like, that's not rocket science, is it? That's just, you know, if you're forward planning there, and you're not just if you're looking at longitudinal planning, so planning over the next, an integration phase is what we call it, where we would integrate the player back in over the next 4 to 6 weeks, then 3 games in the first week back is just too much. It's a load management error. It's a planning error. It's like, and even I'm not saying this because he got injured, right? I would say this even if he didn't get injured. I would say you took too much risk there. You got away with it, but you won't get away with it the next time. So they may have got away with another player before that, and hence they've gone down with that strategy. But that is way too much high risk.
So who is guiding Pep on this? We've talked about player-led decisions. Sergio Aguero saying, look, I've done the training sessions. I've come through those 2 first games absolutely fine. I feel spot on. Is Pep just going with the player? Is he ignoring the advice of maybe, because like you say, it's not rocket science. So the backroom staff, his close and the team behind him must be saying, well, hold on a minute, Gaffer, this is a 3rd game. You know, we could put, Jesus wasn't available, but you could put Raheem Sterling in there. We could play with a false 9 with Bernardo. We do have other options in there. There's no need to go for Sergio Aguero, and yet he did. And like I say, he's spent over a month on the sideline after just coming back after almost 4.
Well, it depends on your backroom staff if they're shithouse or not. And what I mean by that is, like, if they're afraid to tell you their opinion, or are they just echoing back what Pep wants to hear? And if Pep has that type of ego that he's not going to listen to people, or people are worried about giving the opinion that, look, this is too much load here, which I'd imagine was said to him. Okay, well then, it depends on the backroom staff. I have known backroom staff who just go and, they pander to the manager. Whatever the manager says, that's what's happening. Everybody's afraid to question him. It's like, a veil of a black cloud comes over the club as soon as the manager walks into the club. So those kind of guys, they live by the sword, die by the sword. They make decisions like that, and then they probably go and blame somebody for it anyway. So I can't imagine somebody wouldn't have said that this was a high risk strategy. If they didn't, then it kind of says more about Pep than the backroom staff, and that they're afraid to talk to him. And then Mikel Arteta, like Stel was saying, he's new into this, his first job and so on and so forth. How receptive is he of honest feedback and critique? Probably not. Probably would make a different decision and listen to more people as he goes further down his line, down his career with regards to experience. And really what you want to do is kind of put good, strong people in around you as a manager who are not afraid to give you their opinion. And then you still make the decision whichever way it needs to be. I'm not sure I would trust any player in a return to play decision. You listen to them. If they say they're ready, they're psychologically ready, then brilliant. Does that mean that they automatically should go in the starting line? No. It just means that they psychologically feel, I am ready to return to train and play. As a manager, and let's say you're a head of conditioning or you're a head of medical, you should be strategizing their reintegration and go, listen, we acknowledge that the player has said yes, he is ready to play, but he's got limited experience of condition. He just wants to get out there and play. He just wants to get back there with his buddies and so on and so forth. So, I would just give it the tick box from the player personally, that he feels psychologically he's ready to play, so he's motivated to be on the team. He's going out there with the right reasons. However, I'm now managing his load, and I'm making those decisions with the manager, saying, look, this is the way I think that we should be moving this forward. Restricted minutes on the first game, definitely missed the second game, and then restricted minutes on the third game. See how we go from there. And over a period, especially now for 4 months, over a period of 3 to 4 weeks, Gaffer, we're going to need to reintegrate them back to 90 minutes. fucking you're telling me he can only play for 30 minutes? Yeah, I'm telling you he can only play for 30 minutes. You've asked my opinion, there's my opinion. And then you're telling me he can't play against Manchester United on Wednesday night. Yeah, I'm telling you that I think is too high risk. You're saying he's going to get injured. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the risk of him getting injured is very high over this, 3 game week, 3 games in 8 days. I can't predict the future. I can't tell you whether he's going to get injured or not. But when I'm doing a risk analysis and a benefits analysis, my job is to give you the worst case scenario here, to tell you the pre-mortem, what possibly could happen here. Then you can make an informed decision and decide whether to play the player for, 1 game, 2 games, or 3 games. But at least you're making an informed decision with regards to an integration process. 3 games in a week, who did he listen to? Probably nobody.
Interesting. But you touched upon something there, and this was something I wanted to bring up a while back, and obviously we didn't have the late fitness test podcast for a few months during lockdown. But a team you know well, a gentleman you know quite well. I was quite shocked to hear the departure of Dave Rennie down at Leicester City. Head physio. That was the club, and now fairly low-key announcement, given the fact that he had been there for so many years, that he had sort of left the club. A strange decision, like I say, clouded in a little bit of, there's a little bit of secrecy behind, what really went on there. I don't think anybody quite knows, certainly out there in public. But what we have seen this season is Leicester picking up 1 or 2 injuries, and again, just to touch upon, what we've already been looking at is Leicester City brought back another 2 long-term injuries. 3 players long-term injury, and 2 of those players actually broke down within the first 45 minutes of those. One of those being 17 minutes into his comeback, again with a recurrence, with a reaction, with an exact same problem. I'm asking you. I'll ask you a question that you probably won't answer, and you won't know the answer to anyway. But do with the changing of the guard, and historically the data will tell us we've never really seen that happen at Leicester. They've always had a pretty impeccable injury record, but now we've seen a few issues, particularly those 2 players, Ricardo Pereira returning from an ACL injury that was back in March. He had a run out for the under-23s around about the hour mark, and then he played in the Europa League on I'm not sure if it was a synthetic pitch. So it was fairly, it was I suppose, it certainly wasn't a conventional surface to what we're used to in the Premier League. They were very aware of that. And then also Soyuncu. Now, he had a groin problem. Cannot remember the precise nature of the details. Now, initially he was ruled out until January. He decided against surgery. Then Brendan Rodgers said he was going to come back at the end of December. Then all of a sudden he's thrown straight back in, and he lasts 17 minutes. What I'm wondering is, in terms of when you lose somebody with Dave Rennie's experience at the club, all that years of knowledge, somebody who is very competent, who's proven themselves, and be used to working with a variety of managers, that when the new team comes in, or the new, is there a change in philosophy in and around, that decisions, that engagement with the manager? Is Brendan Rodgers bringing in a team that he feels more comfortable with, where he can maybe, make those decisions and overlook maybe the advice of the medical department? Because, I don't know. You tell me. It's like I say, it's a difficult one. It came as a surprise, and just like I say, given his commitment and service to the club, for him to be released and sort of let go like that, something just doesn't ring true to me.
Ben, he could be desperate. He could be desperate. Before the Sheffield United game, they only had 1 win in 5, I think, and that was against Wolves in all competitions.
But League 4, if you look at the league, they're still only 3 points off top place.
True.
For all of the run, but I still think, and I accept what Johnny's saying about, it's the player's decision, but we're going back to, there's a player's been out for X number of months and they're thrown straight back in, and both players are breaking down within 40 minutes of a game, and they're looking at spending one potentially significant period on the sidelines, and the other one, 2 to 3 weeks minimum.
Yeah, Soyuncu has been a revelation from last season. He was immense, and I know back in the last season they suffered a lot. The results were completely useless, if you don't mind me saying. Soyuncu got sent off against Bournemouth when they lost away from home, and that was practically it for him. But he's a fantastic central defender, and I think he's the reason why they were able to sell Harry Maguire, because he's so good. So again, him playing when he did, despite not playing how many weeks it was prior to him coming back into the team, again smacks of desperation for me.
With regards to Dave Rennie is a good friend, and you can't replace Dave Rennie. The intellectual knowledge that he has got, the intellectual property that he has got, his intimate knowledge of that club, it's phenomenal. How he manages the department with regards to onward referrals, with regards to signposting of players, how he speaks to players, how he manages up with regards to the board, manages across with regards to his medical team, manages across rather than down, let's say, with players, or managing up with players, I would say. The way, his attention to detail, like when a player, and I've seen this because obviously I've worked at the lower leagues. We played Leicester City in the it could have been the FA Cup or something like that when I was at Scunthorpe, and so Leicester City brought a kind of a reserve team, and one of the first team players was coming back from injury, and this is a Tuesday night up at Scunthorpe, and Dave came with the team just to make sure that injured player was being looked after. He got his minutes, that injured player. Leicester City did well. They actually turned us over that night. It was his attention to detail. Very, very, very calm person. Very, lovely, lovely person. The decision to let Dave Rennie go is just ridiculous, because you can't replace him. With the people who are, and this is no disrespect to anybody at Leicester City, but if you're looking for somebody to manage or head up a department in Premier League with the knowledge that he has got, you can't find a better one than Dave Rennie. So there must, I'm going to keep certain stuff to myself for sure, which is not appropriate for a podcast here. But yeah, this guy is a phenomenal operator, brilliant with his player management. His knowledge around injuries is second to none. And, if I was a player and I wanted to make sure that I was making a speedy and safe recovery back to training and playing, and that all my options were delineated and outlined and explained to me in front of me, and that somebody was looking over my rehabilitation with a fine-tooth comb, making sure that every stone was uncovered, that would be Dave Rennie. So the stuff that he did, they would have no idea about. So, and it is only now that they'll be operating like every other Premier League team does, but they won't be operating at the level that they were when Dave was there. So they'll believe that they're doing great jobs and they're making good decisions, and they are, but they're not Premier League like Dave Rennie would be.
And you think those repercussions will be felt throughout the course of this season and maybe beyond?
I think they'll be felt with regards to your injury analysis, so the amount of injuries that you'll incur throughout the season, your player management from a rehabilitation point of view, it'll be felt. If your availability rate goes down, then it's going to cost the club a lot of money in absenteeism. So players not on the training pitch are not out playing. Then that has been shown to closely correlate with a reduction in points at the end of the season. And if you look at Leicester City when they won the Premier League, I think they had the least amount of players used that season because they had, a very low injury rate. So I think they only used something like 18 or 19 players that year. So and Dave was cutting edge as well. Dave was working there for 20 years. Cutting edge doesn't mean it's always right. And I'm not saying that ice baths and cryotherapy is the way to go forward for everybody. But Dave was open and receptive to all these recovery strategies. He was into load management. He did a PhD with regards to the hardness of the surfaces of the pitches. So that you've talked about a difference in surface, or one of the players got injured. Well, Dave actually did a PhD in surface hardness, and did it correlate with injuries. So he was the guy who instigated that the training ground had the same surface hardness, as the stadium did. So that the guys would train Monday to Friday on the same surface that they would play on a Saturday. Again, that's, there's a correlation with injury risk reduction there as well, or injury incidents. So, very strange decision. I think that's all I would kind of be happy to comment on there.
Well, my theory, and this is just my theory, because I was quite taken aback and very surprised, given that there weren't any indicators with regards to that. But Stel touched on it towards the end of Project Restart, so the end of the 2019-20 season. Leicester just completely dropped off. Soyuncu's suspension was big, but they also had, 3 high-profile, high-status players sidelined. One of those being James Maddison, who ended up going for surgery, a hip problem, and they also had Ben Chilwell, and that was a related to plantar fasciitis, and then Ricardo Pereira, which was ACL. And I just can't help thinking that it was those long-term problems, particularly Maddison, who was in and out and, was almost being patched up game to game, and he would come back and he'd play 15 minutes, and then he was out for a couple of games before the decision was then taken to surgery. I just can't help thinking that maybe that had some kind of influence on the decision from Brendan Rodgers. I don't know.
But again, it will come down to the narration that has been presented in front of Brendan Rodgers. So what did the medical or the conditioning team narrate? Now, who is in charge at Leicester City? Is it is the head of sports medicine a physio or a conditioning coach, or is it Brendan Rodgers' right-hand man who he brought from Liverpool?
You do know. We'll move swiftly on.
I know nothing.
Stel.
To be honest, if you look at Leicester last season, I think they brought in 6 or 7 players last season. But this summer they brought in Castagna, they brought in Cengiz Ünder, and they brought in, who else did they bring in?
Fofana.
Yeah. So they've only made 3 signings. Now, when you got Europa League football and you're effectively playing twice a week, it's going to take its toll on the players. And I know he's been rotating, which we've seen in the Europa League, but it's going to start taking its toll. And it is a fairly aging squad if you think about it. Kasper Schmeichel, Johnny Evans, Wes Morgan that comes in, Jamie Vardy. So a few of these players, the backbone of this squad, they're wrong in the 30. Now, if you got key players like Soyuncu and Pereira, the right back, who again was absolutely superb last season, picking up injuries left, right, and centre, it's got to be a cause for concern. I think they got AK Athens tomorrow. Is it AK Athens tomorrow?
Yes, it is. And yes, at home. So I think
they'll steamroll them anyway because they're shit. AK is shit. I've been watching them the past couple of seasons. They're terrible. So they'll absolutely pound them. But at the end of the day, injuries build up, and when they're constantly playing games, like Johnny says, with load management and all that, it's going to be difficult for them. I know they're doing well in the league, but eventually it's going to take its toll.
When you're talking about, you touched upon rotation and Leicester, when you're looking at your fantasy team ahead of an upcoming game week,
mm-hmm.
How concerned or worried or influenced are you by those teams who are maybe involved in European football? So your Uniteds, your Chelseas, your Arsenals, your Leicesters?
Very much so, mate. To be honest, I wait for your for your updates before the deadline.
That's a good starting point.
Honestly, I do, because I don't know any other source to find that sort of information from. And, before we started recording, I was talking about the players that I wanted to replace. In fact, I can't remember even if it was at the top of the show when I was mentioning Ndombele, who is back to full fitness. He didn't play against Arsenal, but he's back tomorrow against Antwerp. And the chances are I think he'll play just to get some minutes under his belt because, let's be honest, Spurs should beat them. And it's great for the confidence as well. And they've got Palace away at the weekend.
I mean, there's still something to play for as well in that group. I think if Tottenham, whoever wins, will win that group. So there's still, there's a bit of onus there on Jose to put a decent strength team out to get all the points and get that over the board.
Although the funny thing is, Ben, and I know you guys touched on it last week, the injury to Jimenez has actually affected my team, even though I didn't have him, because I've got Ruben Neves in. And since Jimenez got that injury, Neves started against Liverpool, didn't he? Whereas before he was more like coming off the bench, wasn't really starting regularly, was he?
Yeah, it's been a change on this season, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm tempted to keep him in, and not substitute him, or shall I say, transfer him.
I mean, there's been a lot of talk as well around, who would fill that, playing that advanced central role. And you've looked at maybe Pedro Neto or Daniel Podence, both midfield options in and around 5.4, 5.6 million. And it was Podence who played centrally. Am I right to think, was he Olympiacos?
Well, then so was at Olympiacos. Yeah, he was. Yeah. They've got a very cushy relationship, very cozy relationship with Wolverhampton Wanderers. Vinagre went out there on loan. So, yeah. But nothing to do with Jorge Mendes, by the way. Nothing to do.
And was Podence a player who sort of you picked up on your radar from playing across in Greek football? Is he?
Yeah, Podence, he did very well at Olympiacos, and to be fair, he was a shining star in an Olympiacos team that wasn't very good. Last season was their first league title in 2 years. Bayok won it the year before, and AEK won it the year before that. So Marinakis went gung ho. That's the owner of Olympiacos, who also owns Nottingham Forest, and he basically sent away 15 of his players, and he started playing youngsters. Told the manager to play youngsters, and he's kind of changed the dynamic of the squad. But Potenza was very good at Olympiacos, and we saw the emergence of Tsimikas, the left back that's joined Liverpool in the summer. So yeah, he had that potential there. I know at this moment in time they've got another central defender. What's his name? Portuguese central defender that's linked with Liverpool. Chances are he'll probably Semedo. He's a central defender at Olympiacos, and he's been linked with Liverpool. He'll probably leave in the summer. So they are unearthing some small gems. So Potenza coming to the Premier League wasn't a surprise. The surprise for me is, as you said, he played that central role, and he's completely the opposite of Jimenez. He isn't tall, he isn't strong, he isn't good in the air. Yes, he can bring players into play because he likes to drop deep. He's a playmaker. But Jimenez gives you that physical presence up front, and which is what you need in the Premier League, because that traditional number 9, there aren't that many of them. Cavani, Aguero, Harry Kane. But apart from that, is there a traditional number 9 in the Premier League that you can say, yeah, he reminds me of like an Alan Shearer or a Van Nistelrooy? I don't know. And Jimenez is that player. So for Wolves to lose him, especially at this point of the season where the games are literally coming thick and fast, it's a festive period, man. and we don't know how long he's going to be out for. So if I were an FPL player, I would really look at Wolves' transfer activity in January to see what kind of striker they bring in, because they're gonna have to bring in a striker. I mean, and they're very good at unearthing talent. So
I mean, they've invested heavily in Fabio Silva, very young, still raw, unproven, but he's a club record buy. I mean, I'm not really sure how many minutes he'll be. How
much did he come in for? Was it over 17 million?
Yeah. I think it's I
don't like to speculate, and I'll tell you a lie. I do like to speculate, but I don't like to make accusations without any substance. But when I see the relationship that Wolves have with Jorge Mendes, and I don't know if he's a Mendes client, don't get me wrong.
35 million. Right, I think he's had one start.
There you go. So I question the transfer fees that Wolves have spent on players with a Portuguese agent. That's just my honest opinion, and I'm not saying anything slanderous here, but I'm just saying. So, but listen, the lad could be a top talent. But there's a fella at Benfica. I forget his name. He's a Uruguayan striker. I forget his name now, but he's been firing in goals this season. He scored against Glasgow Rangers in the Europa League, and I think he cost them about £17 million from Peñarol in the summer. And he's another one that's really one to look out for. So he could be a potential target for Wolves.
Cool. Well, Johnny, Stel touched upon the fixtures coming thick and fast, and historically we're approaching the part of the season where we tend to see, the biggest spike in injury instances around, the festive period. We have a game week this weekend. That's quickly followed up by a midweek set of fixtures in the Premier League, and then we'll have another Premier League, and then that's it. We've got the Boxing Day fixtures, we've got the midweek, then we've got the New Year. Given the fact that teams are coming off the back of a heavily disrupted pre-season, we're also seeing those teams who are involved in European competition, still playing. Up until this point, have been playing 3 games a week now for quite a lengthy period. In past seasons, that would stop, I think, in November, and almost clear the calendar for those players to recharge their batteries. Given that what we've been through, and how keep on using it, unprecedented times, how would you foresee the issues in and around Christmas with injuries? Is it something that you think maybe managed a little bit better because of just the circumstances, and therefore managers might be a little bit more cautious, or given the fact that we know it's bad, would you expect it to be worse this time around? Because there's a lot of games coming in there, and inherently you've got that build up of load in players' legs. We've got how many? We've got 7 teams. Is it 7 teams who are involved in European competition, who've been playing 3 games every week, for the last 6, 7, 8 weeks. Factor in the international football, and a lot of those players are away playing 2 or maybe even 3 with an additional international game, shoehorned into that break. What would you envisage, the situation to be like in and around this festive period with regards to injuries, and how can teams and players try to mitigate that risk?
Yeah, well, let's put a line in the sand with this now, and the fact that your injury incidence is going to go up at Christmas. Whether you've been playing 2 games a week for the last 6 weeks, or you've been playing 3 games a week, regards to, it's a lot of load, and it's coming up to a festive period. You've got that psychological and physiological reserve that's been eaten into. You haven't been conditioning for the last 9 weeks, so there's a war of attrition going on here. So that the fact that Christmas time is the point where we see this injury incidence is the fact that because we haven't been conditioning players for nearly 3 months now. So you get your small window of opportunity in the preseason. You do your bit there. They get some conditioning from the games at the start of the season. They kind of settle down. Some guys break, some guys don't. And then training kind of goes into this kind of maintenance phase because you're looking towards the next game. If the next game is 2 days away, then training goes into this kind of like recovery and, we're just getting you ready for the game. Every time that happens and a week goes by and you're just playing game after game after game, you're not getting fitter. You're getting some conditioning from the games, but it's chaotic. Okay? So it comes then to 6, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks. It comes to the Christmas period, and all the time your fitness levels are going this, like this, like this, like this, like this. If you've had a period in between where you're out of the team, or where you've had an injury, or training is just so ad hoc, the games are so ad hoc, then you're even more risk of injury at that stage. So let's put a line in the sand and say, yes, you're absolutely at more risk of injury. Whether you get injured or not is another thing, right? But the risk is high around this time. So if I'm a manager, I'm taking that into account, and I am certainly in this situation going to look at player rotation around this time. Players are tired, members of staff are tired. It's been a tough old grind to get to here. You look at your games, you may prioritize your games with regards to, right, okay, well, look, I think we can take 3 points at home with this one. This would be the game where I would play my high status players. We're going away, we're going down the south for the Tuesday game. If we could settle for a 1-1 draw down there, then maybe we set our team up like that with regards to player rotation as well. That's what I would be doing at this stage, Other than that, you're going to have to find unique ways of conditioning these players to continue to improve their fitness levels, their repeated sprint ability, their explosive power. But teams are not doing this. So they're focusing on rest and recovery. They're focusing on recovery strategies between games. That's the major focus. A shift in the other direction towards performance, and I'm not sure that you would get the buy-in or you would get compliance from players if you're starting to work on power during a 3-game week. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that, there has to be another shift in culture, another shift in the attitude towards conditioning for in-season strategies. Because for the moment, and the buzzword has been for the last 3 or 4 years, what recovery strategies have we got in place in between games, especially around the festive period? You don't hear anybody talking about improving performance in season as such, and especially around this period of time. So I think there needs to be a little bit of shift of the compass as well towards that, and a little bit of common sense in the fact of, injury incidence is up around Christmas time, therefore do something about it. Stop complaining, and do something about
it. Within season, say, performance training, would you expect, after that initial bump, would you expect some kind of downturn in output as players adjust to the demands in between games?
No, because your strategies would be all around, intensity rather than volume. So I'm not talking about increasing the length of time that you're on the training pitch or in the gym. I'm talking about the contents of the sessions. I'm talking about the intensity, looking at rate of force development, looking at maybe some type of high intensity interval kind of training, maybe looking at a polarized approach where you're looking at 80% of the week would be low and then 20% is geared towards those explosive movements, depending on what performance strategy that you are looking at. And longitudinally, I would be building that up, starting literally off the back of pre-season. We would drop down a bit and then our curve would be going this way for all the key metrics, performance metrics, power, explosiveness, repeated sprint ability, change of direction, agility, endurance, cardiovascular endurance, so a strength endurance and a peripheral endurance. So I'm looking at kind of unique, innovative methods on how you would do that. And all the focus has been, in my humble opinion, towards recovery, which is really important. So we're writing a blog on that at the moment. So recovery strategies are very important to help you with regards to the consequences of exercise, so fatigue and dehydration and a lack of glycogen within the muscle and so on and so forth. But so you're getting ready for the next session. But really, what we need to be looking at is, right, yeah, we're putting in our injury strategies, we're looking at recovery, and at the same time, can we look at conditioning players in season in a time crunched or time sensitive environment?
And in your opinion, that isn't happening, or it isn't happening as much as it should be at this moment in time?
Well, it wouldn't matter what my opinion is here.
From your experience, is this something you've observed within that profession?
It's a challenge.
and is this buy-in from the teams themselves, or is it the players, or is it a little bit of both?
Well, you got to get it. It's a top-down approach, really. You got to gain the trust of the manager, don't you? So, number one, the message has got to come from the manager. And if the message comes from manager, and there's one message, and it's a case of we're not prepared to stay ISQ here. We're not prepared to stay in status quo. You're going to have to jump on this performance bus, and it's a little bit tough. And we're asking a little bit more of you. We're not asking for more time, but we are asking for a change in mindset and a shift in culture, more towards performance, especially in season. Then that has to come from the manager.
I will not dwell upon that point anymore. We will leave it at that, Mr. Wilson.
I think I answered that very well.
Stel.
Yes, mate.
Is there anything that you want to add? I know you wanted to touch upon your fantasy team before.
Yeah, do you know what? As I said before, I was thinking about which players to take out and which players to replace them with. And I mentioned Neves earlier, and I'm looking at Costa at the moment, and he's in and out of that Leeds United team, and I'm thinking of players who I can replace him with, because I've decided he's the one that's going to make way. He's going to make way, because I'm pretty sure Neves is going to play at the weekend. So who do I select? And I thought Ndombele. But right now, I'm actually swaying towards Bukayo Saka at Arsenal. They've got Burnley on Sunday, and this is effectively a must-win game for Arteta. It's a must-win game. Burnley at the bottom of the table, or close to the bottom anyway. They're scrambling for points. I don't expect them to play an attack-minded system against Arsenal. I fully expect Arsenal to have more of the ball. And I think Bukayo Saka will be their main man at the weekend, because Aubameyang sure as hell isn't at the moment. So I'm tempted to put that lad in. Was he what 5.2 million or something like that?
Do you want my 10 pence worth?
Go on.
There you go. James Ward-Prowse. He's the highest scoring midfielder over the past 6 game weeks.
Yeah, see, here's another one I was thinking about, Ben, because he takes their corners, set pieces, but Danny Ings is on penalties now, isn't he?
Danny Ings is what, but he's XG points return, so he's returned 49 points in those last 6 game weeks. He's almost double his expected points. They've got Sheffield United this weekend, and we all know the problems that Sheffield United have got at the moment. I'm not sure if you have, Mr. Wilson. Are you aware of the situation down at Bramall Lane at the moment?
They bottom of the league, are they?
1 point, the worst start to a Premier League season ever.
Small-minded mentality, still a League One mentality, not prepared to spend any money, running on a shoestring on a budget.
Oh, I don't know, Johnny. They broke their transfer record in the summer to bring in Ryan Brewster. 24 million, wasn't he?
How many players did they sign?
Well, this summer.
Yeah.
Oh, let me find out for you now. Now you put me on the spot.
I mean, and that's another one as well. I'd question if you are running a tight ship in terms of the finance, why would you go out and buy somebody like Brewster, who is, yes, he has potential. He's a young lad, but he's never played in the top flight before.
Yeah, they brought in 8 players, sorry, Ben. They brought in 8 players, 6 on transfers, 1 on the free and 1 on loan.
Who are the 6? Brewster,
Ramsdale, but...
Spent spent almost 20 on Ramsdale.
Yep. Oliver Burke, Max Lowe, Jadon Bogle, Koulibaly, Fotheringham, and Ampadu.
I worked with Aaron at Chesterfield, actually.
Okay.
He's a good lad.
He obviously went down.
Hasn't he been relegated 3 times, actually? He's been relegated 3 times.
Yeah, I mean, that's a difficult situation, that one. For me, Sheffield United, their first season up, solid unit, worked very hard, didn't concede many goals, but they've always found it difficult to score. They've got 6 or 7 players. Chris Wheeler will inherently go with a 3-5-2 or a 5-3-2, depending on whether he's however you want to interpret that. And the 2 places up for grabs, you've got McGoldrick, fucking dog shit. McBurney. I mean, I think he scored 6 last season.
Ben, you know what? They always blame it on there not being any fans in the stadium and how the fans are the tough man. And look, I get it, because we saw a significant improvement in performances from teams at the weekend who had fans in the stadium. Even West Ham, even though they lost the game in the first half, they were all over Man United. But at the same time, when you look at, as you mentioned, Sheffield United's system, it's predictable. Teams know how to play against them. And on top of that, with Lundstrom and his contractual problems, it's really affected them. Fleck hasn't been the same player. Norwood, as good as he is as a footballer, as a ball player, he hasn't been the same player. And as you quite rightly mentioned earlier, Ryan Brewster, he hasn't played top-level football. He's played championship level, but he hasn't played top-level football. And it's very difficult because he's not the kind of player that I believe suits their system. He isn't a target man. He's more like, like a Rashford or like a Martial, or, a player likes to drop deep, likes to get involved in the game more. But the other 2 strikers that they got, McBurney and the other fella, they're static. They'll hold the ball up and they're physical, but that isn't Brewster's game. And until Wilder finds a solution to that problem, they're going down. They'll be down by February.
I mean, do you think they'll go down?
I think so, yeah. I put it this way, unless he brings in another central midfielder that complements the other 2 players, because Berger's there as well. And Berger they brought in for big money last summer as well, didn't they? Or last January. Yeah. So again, they have spent money, but I get the feeling that Wilder's going to get the sack. I get the feeling, because you know what teams are like, or owners, or club owners and chairmen. When it comes to a point of the season where desperate times call for desperate measures, it's always the manager that gets the chop. And regardless of how well he did to get them up, it's a results business. If they get relegated, how much do they potentially lose out on revenue next season? So, I mean,
it's a big call, to be honest. I mean, could you see Wheeler getting sacked, Johnny?
Oh, yeah, he's a legend.
Yeah, but so was Bobby Robson at Newcastle.
Sheffield United is a big club. Is a big club, and the fans there, they don't tolerate. They tolerate very little. It's a homely club, but it is a huge club. I don't think unless you've worked really in football intimately, you don't realize how big this club is. If Sheffield United make a signing, and if it's not a marquee signing, like the player, the fans are like, no, you don't play for Sheffield United. You don't have the prestige to play for this club. So it's a huge club. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's in disarray with regards to ownership and regards to kind of investment into the club. And really, those amount of signings, Stel, that's very small for a Premier League team. And then when you're looking at a team that wants to go and compete, there was nobody there really that you had said that is competing for a top 6 position in the Premier League. Really, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. So I say that their transfer, expenditure would be relatively low, I would imagine, comparatively to other teams in the Premier League.
Oh yeah, I mean they spent 56 million this summer, I think, something like that. 56 million, something along those lines. But I think again it goes back to recruitment, and the players that they've signed are championship players. You know, that's no disrespect to them. It's a fact. You know, the two players they signed from Derby. One of them they signed from Sarpsborg in Norway. You know,
I think Chris Wilder would argue that that there's not a great deal of difference between being the upper echelons of that of the championship and then the lower half of the Premier League. And in terms of stature, and like Johnny said, if you're not familiar with the club, if it's not something that you've experienced maybe firsthand, I mean, I wouldn't look at Sheffield United and think they're a big club. Not for 1 second. I'd maybe look at Sheffield Wednesday and I would say Wednesday are a bigger club, in my opinion, only based on the fact that, Wednesday have spent in recent times, years within the Premier League. And I think back to, some of the games that we had with them in Hillsborough. But I never considered Bramall Lane and Sheffield United as being a big club, not by any stretch of the imagination. So are clubs like Sheffield United able to attract, those players? We had a scenario at Newcastle a lot of years ago where when we had Kevin Keegan managing the club, and when Kevin Keegan was looking to recruit players, yes, you had the buy-in from him, but we had the money of John Hall, and what we said was, look, well, I know you want to play in the Champions League, and I know you want to play in London. Come over here and use us as a stepping stone. Now, there are no stepping stones. There's so much money in the game. Players, if somebody gets 300 grand a week or 600 grand a week, does it really make that much difference now? And so I don't know.
Don't forget, I think we've seen over the past few seasons, let's say, for example, Watford, they got relegated and, a few of their players left in the summer. Some of them ended up in La Liga for a mid-table Spanish team. So I think it just depends on how good the player's agent is as well, in all fairness.
Yeah, we've seen a few of them.
Well, look, put it this way. Look at Sheffield United right now. Okay, as you said, they're bottom of the league on 1 point. West Brom are on 6. So that's 5 points difference between them and 19th. Burnley also on 6. Fulham on 7. So there's a 6-point gap straight away. But then above Fulham are Brighton on 10 points. So there's a 9-point deficit between Sheffield United and Brighton. And Arsenal in 15th, but we won't go into that. But, that's 9 points at this stage of the season. Okay, it doesn't sound like a lot. 3 wins on the bounce. It could change everything. But given the way that they're playing, they're throwing results away. They're throwing points away against Leicester City. 1-1 with a minute to go. Why they're committing 6-7 men forward, knowing full that Leicester are more effective on the counter-attack, it doesn't make any sense to me. Hold on to what you've got. Hold that point against a team that, as you mentioned, they're in the top 5, top 6. That's a good point. It might be at home, but it's a good point. And that sets you up for the next game against Southampton, who, again, got a good result against Brighton, but away from home against Southampton, if you get a point, again, the confidence builds from there. So, again, it's the naivety. I don't know whether it's a desperation to get points on the board that they committed or they overcommitted men forward against Leicester in the last minute. I don't know what it is. I personally, I wouldn't put it down to just player ability. I'll put it down to confidence and also possibly the manager's way of motivating the players. I don't know. Maybe he's feeling the strain. Maybe he's feeling the pressure because, listen, they say a week is a long time in football. Can you imagine how long a year is? A year ago, they were getting promoted to the Premier League. Everything was all hunky-dory. And now the pressure is on. Has Wilder ever had this pressure before? He hasn't. So...
Well, he has. He has because he's been, in the lower leagues with Sheffield United, and it wasn't always hunky dory and so on and so forth. So it's the same pressure because you're going to get sacked anyway.
No, true, but when you had such a good season in the Premier League last year, ending where did they end? 10th.
Yeah, there was talk at one stage that they may even push for a European qualification spot.
Precisely. So they've gone from up here to all the way down here. That's a big drop. It's a dramatic drop as well. Remember when Sunderland under Mick McCarthy, they had a terrible season. They got promoted and they had a terrible season. Derby County, terrible season. if Sheffield United continue doing what they're doing right now, playing the way that they're playing, especially making these silly decisions in key moments of games, they'll have the worst Premier League points tally ever.
I mean, a second season syndrome, sure, they don't turn into a bad team overnight. Is it down to confidence purely? Is it a case of when you come up, when you're promoted to that top flight, the world, arguably the world's biggest league, most marketable league, you have that first season, everything's new. Every stadium you go to is new. The Manchester United, the Anfields, the Stamford Bridge. Almost second season is a case of being a little blasé and sitting back on your laurels and thinking, well, we've been here and we've done it. We know what it's about. You take your foot off the gas. Psychologically,
but Ben, it isn't really second season syndrome. It's more like 3/4 of season syndrome, because their bad form started against Aston Villa when that goal wasn't given, when the ball crossed the line and the Hawkeye wasn't working. That's when their problems started. It wasn't, just something that started beginning of this season. It was the back end of last season. If you look at their results, the back end of last season, they were terrible. I think they only beat Spurs at home. I think it was the only win back in the last season. When after Project Restart. So it's been a continuation from then. So again, I don't know whether it's back to the old, chestnut where there aren't any fans in the stadium, because they are I've been to Bramall Lane. And it is a very hostile ground. And sorry for the cliche, but it is a traditional English football stadium. The fans are above you. They're on top of you, literally on top of you. When you look at the new stadiums like your Emirates and your White Hart Lanes and whatnot, it's an identikit stadium. It's nothing like Bramall Lane. Bramall Lane it's hostile, man. So it obviously gives the players a boost. So I think it's made a big difference, a big difference.
You buy into that, Johnny? Is it with the crowds or the lack of? Particularly with these smaller teams, you maybe Selhurst Park, Crystal Palace, and Roy Hodgson. They're always, again, another stadium where the crowds are on top of the players, are on the pitch. They're very vocal.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been places where it has been, I remember getting punched on the pitch once. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm the physio. Do you know what I mean? Like, so when you're the away team and you're going down somewhere and a few of the incidents were like, ridiculous. I remember we went down to Peterborough, I think it was. Like, I'm going back to like 2009, 2010 now. And it was a free-for-all on the pitch, number one, right? And the fans they just went mental. When we were leaving, they threw a brick through the front of the bus window. I remember one of the players going out. It was just like the crowd makes such a difference. I remember getting kidnapped as well in a away game. Well, like, I was wearing a full blue kit, right? And all the way fans were singing, "Here comes Papa Smurf." And one of the fuckers pulled me into the, I'm obviously dramatizing it now, saying I got kidnapped. I didn't get kidnapped, obviously. But, I got pulled into the away fans, like, and the managers looking at me going, "What the fuck am I gonna do?" You know what I mean? Like, they're just outrageous. Like, so yeah, the atmosphere makes a huge difference. Like, and Bramall Lane, it does rock. People talk about going down the lane. That is the ultimate going down the lane.
And United bigger than Wednesday? Have I got that one wrong?
I don't know. I suppose I'm a Sheffield United supporter, so.
Yeah. I think
it's all coming out now.
Yeah, you really kept that one very quiet. I wasn't even sure. I didn't even know you had a football team to support.
I don't really. I don't really. But if I was picking one of those two, then I probably, I pretty much signed the dotted line for Sheffield Wednesday as well as a physio there not so long back actually, but decided to turn it down lastminute.com, and maybe that was part of my decision. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, look, Ben, look at teams like Burnley and West Brom, who again historically have got really rowdy supporters, especially Burnley. And again, Turf Moor isn't a nice place to go to. Again, another stadium I've been to, it isn't nice. It really isn't. So I can imagine how much of an effect it's having on those players, especially at big games, but like relegation 6-pointers. When there's a team below you in the table, you're level points with them and you're fighting relegation. They come to your ground and it's dead silent. You want those fans to be backing you. You want those fans. And I know, again, for anyone that's listening and doesn't buy into it, they're going to say, oh, well, it didn't make a difference because players should want it more. Well, I agree. You should want it more as a player. But there's no doubt that the hostile atmosphere plays a psychological effect on both the home team and the away team. I've been to games in Cyprus, right? In Cyprus, where fans are throwing flares onto the pitch. I don't mean the 70s trousers. I mean smoke bombs. You know?
Just whip the strings off.
You know, they're on the bus approaching the stadium and they're throwing rocks at the glass of the bus. They're throwing all sorts of stuff. Then the fans get in the stadium and it's a raucous atmosphere. And it affects the opponents. It affects the away team. But now teams are getting on the team coach. They're getting into the stadium. Don't even need security. They just walk in. They play their music in the dressing room. They get changed. They have a little bit of a dance. They get on the pitch. They warm up. And then they go on as if like it's a Sunday league game. And there's no atmosphere. The pressure's less as well, Ben. The pressure is less.
Statistically, we've seen a massive shift in the number of teams winning away from home. So there's, the numbers will tell us that, the lack of a crowd has affected home teams and it has evened the playing field, as it were.
And there you go. Right, shall we talk about your dream team then?
Nope. I've just looked at the time. It is now 10:15. We've been on an hour and 15 minutes.
We still haven't decided who I'm going to bring in as my replacement midfielder.
James Ward-Prowse, I tell you, he is. Look, last 6 game weeks, he's your man.
Knowing my luck, he's going to get injured in the warm-up.
Against Sheffield United, honestly, he's it's 6.2 million. I cannot really see anybody guaranteed minutes. Who else am I looking at? I'm not even thinking about anybody else in that team, to be honest.
Really? Well, look, I'm going to switch something about affordable, right? And
if you want to.
Affordable. So I've got 6.6 million. The choices I've got, shall I choose on form or on form?
Well, you've got to look at fixture difficulty. Some people like the eye test. Some people like the underlying stats. I mean,
but even Souček at West Ham, I'm tempted to put him in because Leeds aren't great defending set pieces, and he's good in the air. And he's a friend of a friend as well. So
he scored, didn't he? Scored against United. I think I actually transferred him out. And since I've transferred him out, he scored twice.
Blimey.
For me, it is Ward-Prowse every day of the week. If I'm going beyond that...
Even Fabinho's playing centre-back, but he's a guaranteed starter now.
You could put in Neto 5.6 million. Now he's going to be playing in that advanced role. Decent form for Wolves. Forget the Liverpool result at Anfield because Liverpool can do that to the best teams. Wolves have a nice fixture against Aston Villa at Molineux. So that's the Black Country Derby?
Yes, even that one I'm not totally convinced about. I'm not convinced because again, where's the physical threat up front for Wolves? Tyrone Mings is going to eat up any striker that they've got. Granted, they've got Traore, who's got a lot of pace, but with Jack Grealish not playing a game for a couple of weeks now because obviously the Newcastle game was postponed due to COVID. Ollie Watkins has got a point to prove after that penalty miss against West Ham. I know Barkley's still out injured, which is a blow for them. But Wolves aren't the same team defensively. Since they've gone to 4 at the back, they're not the same. Conor Cody isn't able to play those diagonal balls like he used to. I don't know. This is probably the most difficult decision I've had to make all season in terms of bringing a player. I mean, even Gini Wijnaldum, I could put in. He'll play again.
I'm telling you, man. Ward-Prowse, hands down. End of story. Have yourself a good night's sleep and go with GWP. 6.2.
I can't go with your advice given the game week that you had last week.
Look, we will see.
I'm like a million places above you as well, so I can't take your advice.
We will see the end of the season. Look, you win nothing in December.
True.
Winter miles, summer smiles.
I'm gonna wait for your report on Thursday after the Europa League games, and if Sacco is fit, I'm putting him in.
Sacco or Saka?
Saka.
No, man. Why? No. Don't do it. My advice would be just don't do it.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Who's the Burnley right back nowadays, anyway?
Right back will probably be Toskowski, Matt Loughton, Ben Mee. Matt Loughton.
Ben Mee's the centre back.
So it'll be Matt Loughton and then Charlie Taylor on the left.
I don't know about they drew against Everton at the weekend, didn't they? It'll be Loughton and Robbie Brady wide right. It's tempting to put Saka in, man. Tempting.
See, you need to get on the FPL bandwagon and get yourself a fantasy team and understand what it is we're actually talking about.
Yeah, but I'm basing it on from a tactical perspective. See, you guys are going by points and all that kind of stuff. I'm going from what he can do off the ball, how he can bring other players into play, the potential for assists. I mean, look, Benteke got 50 points last week, right? When has that ever happened? When?
No, I'll give you that. I mean, I just want to have a look at some of the. Let's just have a look at.
Bielsa's even named his team for Leeds West Ham, hasn't he? He's already named that team.
Yeah, doesn't happen very often. I mean, underlying stats for Saka. XG 1.22 for the last 6 game weeks. I mean, arguably, there's only Aubameyang who's had a better XG than that. But that's more reflective of the fact that Arsenal have been absolutely garbage.
Yeah, I know. But it's got to turn around sometime and somewhere.
We keep on saying that. I mean, he does have the most key passes. He doesn't have any goal involvements. None. He hasn't created any big chances. In terms of expected assists, again, it's only Aubameyang who's who's got a higher XA.
Yeah.
And in terms of
hang about, have you got any team news for Newcastle? You guys are playing West Brom and they're without Pereira, so that would be a big loss for them.
Johnny will be to tell you about what's going on at Newcastle.
Oh yeah.
Why?
It's all cloak and dagger at the moment. There's been nothing released in terms of update. Who was affected by COVID? Who was advised to self-isolate because of close contact? What we do know is the Newcastle training ground opened again earlier this week, but the club are keeping, their cards very much close to the chest. I will let it slip that Callum Wilson, up until this point, is training with Newcastle, so he was not one of the players affected by COVID and or injury. So,
okay, I'll make you a deal then. I'll make it just for you this week because I know you had a really bad week last week, right? And I feel a little bit sorry for you. If John Joe Shelby is fit, I'm putting him in.
Oh, I like John Joe Shelby, I do, but for me, the only player that I'll be having in my team from Newcastle at this moment in time would be Callum Wilson. Everybody else, I don't trust Steve Bruce.
Well, he's not going to play Almiron because Almiron is more like a bench warmer these days.
Well, the thing is, he started against Palace. And if those players are fit and available, I could see Bruce naming an unchanged team.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go with the Paraguayan for Roberto Rojas then. I'll do Almiron. Put Almiron in. There you go. Okay. So if he's fit, I'll play Almiron. Brilliant. Okay, you made my mind up.
Good luck with that.
Save this because I'm going to remember it next time we do this show.
yeah. I look at that. It's at roughly 10:22 that we recorded this bit. So 1 hour and 20 minutes into the pod. Listen, 1 hour 22 minutes. I think we've done for tonight. We've covered quite a lot. Enjoyed it again, guys. Really appreciate it. So hope everybody else did. If you weren't watching live, why not? And if you're catching us on YouTube, then please feel free to subscribe to our HotMic channel. And we will be uploading the audio file onto Shoot the Defense when we work out how.
We'll find a way.
There have been 1 or 2 issues with the audio files and the quality. That was one of the issues we've had. Okay. So I don't know if there's a way around that of cleaning the audio or recording your end. Maybe that might be something that we do in future.
Give that a try.
But for tonight, that is it. So it's a good night from me.
Good night from me.